talking about experimental data or model data?
Experimental data. So that would be measured data at different sites.
That can be difficult to get, but yeah, I guess I'll leave somebody else comment on that.
We are in Alberta, and there are several resources for us to get data about wind speed. Alberta Agriculture and Forestry has weather stations and across Alberta, and there are quite a few of them. So you can ask details. So my student Tyler is in the group. So he's currently working with that data set, and that has a various weather-related things, and wind speed is one of them. So they have wind speed at 2 meters and 10 meters, and they come from weather stations. So I would think that they're actual observations. So that's one source. The other source that we get our data is atmospherical data from ERA 5. So this is a reanalysis data set, and it's, I think it's provided by, I forget the organization that provides the data set, but again, you can ask Tyler. Tyler, you can comment on that. So again, that's freely available, but this is reanalysis data. And it provides wind speed at a certain resolution. So it divides the region into a grid. At a certain resolution, it provides not just wind speed, several other weather-related atmospherical variables. So that's,
yeah.
Those are the two things that we get our data from with regards to Alberta. And the other thing that we have is the Alberta system operator provides wind power output data for every wind farm in Alberta on a time resolution of 15 minutes, I believe, or again, I might be, so that's another source of data.
Yeah, I want to comment on the ERA 5 data. It's provided by EMF WF, and it provides reanalysis data for example, wind speeds, wind direction, and for other variables like geopotential height and the sea level pressure. It provides quite a lot of different types of variables for the atmospheric data.
Can I ask you to write down it on the chat? Because we are actually in our research project, it would be beneficial, very beneficial to have observation data from wind plants in order to compare our CFD simulation. So if you don't mind, please, could you write down this website, this source of data on the chat? Thanks you very much.
Okay.
I know, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. No, I was just going to say that I know that some data are available from Environment Canada regarding weather stations, for example, historical data and so on. You can see on the Environment Canada's website, but as regards wind power data per se, that's what as I was saying, I think it's more difficult to get, but it's very nice if some of it is available. For example, in Alberta, I didn't know about it.
Maybe I'll pop in, and I'm not sure if this is going to change the direction of the conversation, but as Sebastiano discussed in his brief presentation, our group is trying to understand wake interactions between neighboring wind farms. And one of the tricky things here is to measure the wake recovery far downstream of the turbines, 10 or 15 kilometers downstream as it interacts with the neighboring wind farm. And the industrial collaborator that we're working with also has operations in Germany, and with a number of groups within the federal government and within a number of research universities within Germany. They've conducted a number of airborne wind measurements with airplanes. So they have a certain kind of measurement grid, and they traverse the downstream of the wind farms in order to measure wake recovery. And that will be useful for us, not now, but as we progress with our research, to have measurements that measure far field wake recovery far downstream of an actual installation. So that's one data set, hopefully will be useful.
Joshua, if you at University of Windsor, I had worked at a school out of the States, drones, but not the the fixed wing drones, to do some downstream wake measurements as well, and did pick up some things. Just the conditions weren't great on that one day that they were able to get. But that's fascinating to hear that you're measuring full sites downwind, and what the effect is, not just for other power production, but is there, what's the term, something like where the moisture level changes based on the wind flow patterns, and it actually can change the microclimate. Yeah, I'd be interested to see some results there.
Phil, who was the researcher in Windsor that was working with the team?
Trying to think who was the main go-to. Dr. Caravo, even Lindsay would know as well if you reach out to them directly. I got the chance to be there that day when they took those measurements, but certainly not holding the pen.
Thanks. Yeah, I can follow up. Thank you.
And to your previous question, Eldritch, were you talking about kind of microclimate forecasting measurements? So trying to get Met Tower type data closer to specific geographical regions. So whereas the Environment Canada data at 10 meters, that's 100 kilometers away, might not actually do the trick for what you're asking about, I don't think. Exactly.
Yeah, that was it. It was also in the context of something that UNB's work seems to have done quite well, which is forecasting wind ramps, and how power output from a wind farm can fluctuate massively, sometimes going from 10 and 20% to 100% in a matter of minutes. For something like that, it's exactly the situation that Phil described, that there may be an Environment Canada weather station maybe 20, 30, 100 kilometers away, but oftentimes the geography around that station is not quite the same as what it is where a wind farm is. So that was the context of this question, and that how easy or difficult is it to source data like that? And to that end, I had no idea that the Alberta system operator actually made wind farm data available. So that's thanks for mentioning that. But anyone who wants to add to this comment on how easy or difficult it is to source this data in other provinces?
From my understanding, AWS True Power, now absorbed into UL, has, I think, probably one of the biggest data sets, and because they are pulling in from different wind farms as well, their Met Towers and that kind of thing. But that's their bread and butter, right? So that's money in the bank if you got that data. So I don't know of any other big distributors of data. I just don't know. Maybe they do publish some historic things in different reports, but it's a great question.
Maybe you have one comment. You might be interested in a nowcasting project that is being worked on at Environment Canada. by some colleagues, nowcasting on a grid. That is not, to my understanding, that is not available yet, but that should be soon. So it's not directly observation data, but it's some kind of mix between model data and observation data close by to make some kind of work so that you get as much as possible conditions. But there's actually weather elements and there's nowcasting. I don't want to go into too much detail because I'm not an expert on that, but this is something that can be interesting to get more information on the 2.5. For example, one example that my colleague is often showing is that when you look at the weather that you have now, for example, if you type Montreal, you will get the data that is observed in Dorval. And if you are in downtown Montreal, you might not have exactly the same data in same observation as in Dorval. But what is worked on now is to try to get information at a higher resolution at every grid point to get as much as possible close to what is being observed. So that kind of data could be useful if that's what you're looking for, to get more local information. But we could discuss by email or by phone or something later if you want more information. I could put you in contact with some colleagues that could explain in more details. I don't want to go into too much detail because I'm not sure of all the detail, but I think it can be quite interesting.
Thanks. Yeah, that's good to know. With that, I'm going to throw the floor open for anyone to ask questions that they would like. So now's your chance. Okay.
Maybe, well, oh, sorry. I was going to say, maybe just one question. Is there on your side interest in having, as I mentioned before in my presentation, having higher time resolution data as well as higher horizontal resolution data for some sites, for example, for some sites where there's a lot of wind farms that could be used to get more information?
I'm actually not the right person to answer that question, so I'm hoping somebody else could.
Well, I'm not sure you asked power data or for.
It's wind velocity or other variables.
Yeah, for wind speed, we do have for Prince Edward Island, we do have about 60 stations. Let me just put the link we have. It's weather PI.
Okay, it's observation data. Right? I was talking more about model data actually, about forecast.
Oh yeah, it's observational data. Yes, yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but in this this app, we have about 60 weather station, real-time weather station across PEI, and we do have wind speed for most of the stations. And okay. But we don't use them for wind applications. We basically use them to do climate modeling and validation purposes. Yeah.
Is it in real time or it's more
real time
data?
Real time. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting. Very interesting.
The model data that you're mentioning, how does that compare to reanalysis data? Are these the similar concepts?
The data, it's really running the model and for performing a forecast of some time in the future. So we're doing it, for example, the HRDPS is run at the CMC 4 times a day on the whole of Canada with a 2.5 kilometer resolution.
Okay.
And then it issues forecast for 48 hours with a 30-minute resolution for the first 24 hours and then a 1-hour resolution. And myself, I've been running the model on a smaller grid to get so that I could output data at a higher time resolution, for example. While I'm not so familiar with reanalysis, but I think it's a different concept.
Reanalysis is historical data.
Yes.
Combined, I think you were mentioning that before, that there's something similar happening at Environment Canada, but it takes actual observations, but then it provides an interpolation so that you have a value for every point in a grid. So, and that's a historical data, so it's not, it doesn't give the conditions right now, but it gives the conditions at a certain time in the past.
Yes.
So we need that kind of data because we are incorporating that into forecasting methods. And we always use historical data when we forecast things to see if a model does well.
Yes.
We just treat a portion of the past data as, you know, as a testing set, and then use the previous ones, and then to estimate a model, and then you see how the model performs, making predictions in that part of the data that's left out. So we use historical data to do all that, not really the current forecast.
Yeah, I see. What I was mentioning as model data and the models that we're running is really to perform forecasts to go into the future with different time and horizontal grid resolution.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
My pleasure.
Yeah, I want to comment on the Arrow 5 data we mentioned before. The data we're working with, they are in hourly resolution, and they don't provide any finer resolution than that. And for the Alberta weather station data, they are also hourly. So yeah, there's no finer like 30 minutes or even smaller time steps. So they're all hourly data.
Okay, anyone with any closing comments, any final questions? Just so you know, we have about 3.5, 4 minutes to go. So any final questions? Now is your chance.
Yeah, I have a question for Simon Philip. And you mentioned your the spatial resolution from your model is 2.5 kilometers, right? Is this for the whole country or?
Yes, for the model from Environment Canada, which is called HRDPS, High Resolution Deterministic Prediction System. It's the overall the whole of Canada with a 2.5 kilometer resolution. But what I was mentioning as well is that I've been running it on a smaller grid centered around the Maritimes to have control over the output, so I can output at a higher time resolution, because as I mentioned, for the first 24 hours, the HRDPS is outputting only every half hour. So I can have a higher time resolution. And now internally, there are some people that work in forecasts with a higher resolution still. But this is, my understanding is that it's not, it's at an experimental stage yet, although that's been used. Some forecasts have been made, for example, for the Pan American Games a few years ago with a higher time resolution, as well as I think the Olympic Games in Vancouver. So there's some people who are working on developing higher resolution possibilities, and I'm working on that as well. I began to use some tools in order to increase the resolution and doing it on smaller grids, because doing it over the whole of Canada would be quite demanding, but running it on smaller grids is possible in a reasonable amount of time, let's say. For example, we could go down to 250 meters, which is a 10-fold increase in the resolution.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Welcome.
Can I ask one last question? Like, we know that velocity data are important, and it's easier to like about observation. Near the wind farms, usually every wind farm has a wind mast, both for control and data acquisition. But what about the temperature? Because also the temperature is important in the boundary layer, because like there is a coupling, influence between the temperature profile and the whole overall boundary layer, which in turn influences the velocity. So what about data, observation data about temperature? Does anyone know?
I would think that they are measured as well as the velocity usually on a met mass, but I'm not sure about their availability though.
Yeah, but the problem is that like temperature, you will need to go at heights. Mm-hmm. So it's like, yeah, you could measure with the mass, but you're limited in the lower portion of the atmospheric boundary layer. So it would be great to have like temperature data going like up till, I don't know, the capping inversion layer, or like ranges about like 1 kilometers. And like, this is difficult obviously with mass, but I was wondering if there is some data set available or some technique available.
Yeah, you probably want to look at remote sensing data. Probably you can get some, yeah. But for weather station, it cannot go that high.
Yeah.
Era 5 would definitely have temperature data at probably at different heights.
Thanks. Okay, I will have a look now at the links in the chat. Thank you very much.
Okay, with that, everyone, thanks for all your contributions. Our time here in the breakout room is done. So you can either rejoin the main room for there's a discussion from Yves Gagnon about one of his books, or that's the end of our session also. So it's up to you. If you do decide to stay on, you're welcome. If you do decide to leave, thanks for your time and thanks for being part of this event. So with that, I will move to the